a seductive psychological thriller in which a young woman with a dark past and almost lost hopes gets a job as a housemaid in the luxurious estate of a wealthy family, the perfect wife, a handsome husband, a charming little daughter. It seems fate has sent her a gift. But beneath the glitter of wealth and flawless aesthetics lie secrets, temptation, and dangers. Everyone in a house has their own secret, and the price for uncovering them might be too high. I'm talking about the film The Housemaid, directed by Paul Feig, an adaptation of the best-selling novel by Freida McFadden. Even during promotion, the film attracted attention. The main roles are played by Sydney Sweeney and Amanda Seyfried, while the male characters are portrayed by Brandon Sklenar from It Ends With Us and Michael Maroney from 365 Days. All the trailers reminded viewers that this was one of the most anticipated premieres of the year. And the film itself received quite solid reviews from critics and audiences. Plus, director Paul Feig is also known for his work on the edge of suspense and humor, most famously in the two-part film A Simple Favor with Blake Lively and Anna Kendrick, where he skillfully combined tension and irony. But personally, I was especially interested in watching The Housemaid for another reason. This is one of a few films where I had already read the book beforehand and actually remembered it pretty well. So I wasn't so much focused on suspense or plot twists, but on how the filmmakers would translate it onto the screen. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in this video. How The Housemaid works as a thriller, how the adaptation differs from the book, and why, in my opinion, the film in many ways turned out better than the literary source. Hi everyone, my name is Alena Shilova and you're watching Femme Fatale's Heels channel, where we talk about women, film and women in film. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave a comment and a like. This really helps our videos to get more views and we are always very grateful for your support. To put it briefly and without spoilers, in my opinion, The Housemaid doesn't capture the atmosphere of the story and the characters quite as well in the first half as the book does. But in the second half of the film, the way the filmmakers slightly changed the story and even added depth to some characters actually works much better than in the book. Overall, I can't fully judge how well the suspense works in the film or how unpredictable the main plot twist is. Again, because I had already read the book and remember it pretty well. But I can say that Sydney Sweeney and Amanda Seyfried's characters are well developed. The detective elements are present, and I honestly thought while watching that if I didn't know the story, I'd really enjoy following it and guessing what might happen next. That's probably all I can say without spoilers, because The Housemaid is a psychological thriller and many details are revealed gradually through the plot, so from here on the review will include spoilers. If you don't want anything revealed, it's better to watch the movie first and then come back to this video. In general, The Housemaid keeps many plot points from the book. We will talk more about the differences a little bit later. This is positive in a way, because the book has a lot of interesting scenes that were successfully translated to the screen. At the same time, the film also inherits some of the book's flaws. But what exactly are they? It's worth talking a bit about the author of the book, Freida McFadden. In recent years, she's become a hugely popular writer in the thriller and detective genres. She even sometimes compared to Coleen Hoover, who is primarily known for her romantic dramas like It Ends With Us. Right now, several of Hoover's books are being adapted into Hollywood films, so if you are interested, we could make another video on this topic. Please let us know in the comments. But the comparison between Hoover and McFadden isn't about similar plots. It's more about how prolific both authors are in their representative genres. For example, Freida McFadden has written over 30 books. Her novels have a certain style. I describe it best as popcorn detective fiction. They are hard to put down. I read The Housemaid in just a couple of days and really enjoyed the experience. At the same time, if you analyze it more deeply, the novel has some inconsistencies and plot points that can feel predictable or a bit forced. This This is similar to how romantic dramas by Hoover are sometimes criticized for plot holes or unusual character decisions. But in McFadden's case, I wouldn't claim it as a flaw. It's more of a feature of the format, a fast-paced, intriguing thriller that keeps the reader on edge. Because of this, you shouldn't expect The Housemaid to have the psychological depths of more complex films like The Gone Girl. The story is focused on intrigue and unexpected twists, so on a second read or rewatch, many moments might lose some of their surprise, and a few things might even feel slightly illogical. This doesn't make the book or film worse, it's just built in a different format, fast, gripping, popcorn style, while the main value is watching the plot and characters unfold under tension. With this in mind, let's move on to the characters in the film and the book as well. The main character of the movie is Millie, played by Sydney Sweeney, who has recently faced some controversies in her career due to her political statements, including sympathy for right-wing parties and Trump. Honestly, I don't want to really talk about this situation in this video because for me, as a Ukrainian woman, any person who supports Trump and his policies is already not getting any sympathy for me, but in terms of this story, I still want to talk about Sydney's character. Millie's backstory is that she has legal troubles due to her past violent outbursts and is desperately in need of a job, having been fired early from her previous position. Both in the book and the film, the information is received gradually. In both cases, we first learn that Millie is sleeping in her car, that she was kicked out of her previous job, and that the position at the Winchester estate is an opportunity she could never have dreamed of. In my opinion, the book does a much better job of building the mystery around what exactly Millie did to end up in prison. In the film, this is shown in a single flashback near the end. She saved her friend from being raped, but also inflicted injuries on the attacker that immediately died. Neither the victim nor the system stood up for Millie. Another situation in the film is only briefly mentioned. The incident that caused Millie to lose her previous job. Her boss was harassing another girl, and she also used violence against him. In the book, this moment plays a bigger role because Millie is afraid that her prison counselor might find out about it. Overall, through both the book and the film, establish a key trait of Millie's character, her tendency to use violence against men who harm women. I also think that in the book, Millie comes across as much smarter and more sarcastic character. Because the story is largely written from her perspective, we get to hear her thoughts, and even when life becomes difficult in the house due to Nina, Millie still has strong reasons to stay and constantly reminds herself and us about it. Thanks to her inner monologue, Millie can think quite harshly or funny about Nina and her daughter, which feels realistic because it doesn't make her seem like this innocent passive victim who is just suffering. However, in the film, the effect of Millie's apparent innocence works better for the plot twist. In the middle of the book, a big plot twist is revealed. It's actually not Nina who's the monster, but her husband Andrew, who locked his wife in the attic. Also, if you're enjoying this video, please give it a like, subscribe, and write a comment. This is really important since YouTube algorithms really like when people engage with the content while watching it. We will be enormously grateful for your support. While reading the book, I remember that the first half clearly builds that feeling that something is off with Andrew. Through Millie's perspective, Freida McFadden constantly emphasizes how good he is, how loving and kind he is, and Millie keeps wondering how such a wonderful person could end up with someone like Nina. Not once does she consider that things might not be as perfect as they seem. For me, that moment felt a little bit unrealistic, because if Millie is supposed to be so smart and observable, why doesn't she question her assumptions even once? In the film, however, this moment feels more realistic. Since we aren't inside Millie's head like in the book, we see from the outside how Nina mistreats her, while Andrew always behaves with kindness and compassion. At the same time, the world around them, family, friends, nannies, other mothers, constantly hints that Nina is unstable. So when Millie ends up trapped by Andrew in the second half of the film, it feels more logical and believable. Nina's character is also almost completely faithful to her version in the book. By the way, I even got a chance to do a short interview with the film's director, Paul Feig. It was for Ukrainian outlet Vogue Ukraine, but still I can share with you some thoughts and parts of our discussion. In the interview, he mentioned that he wanted to make Nina a bit quirky and cheerful, someone who jokes inappropriately, but in a good way, to give an impression like, okay, she is rich, a little strange, but a nice woman. This makes the emotional roller coaster she puts Millie through even more striking. It turns out that Nina did all of this intentionally to push Millie into Andrew's hands. How well thought out this plan is, however, raises questions, both in the book and in the film. There is that great Gone Girl moment when Nina finally tells the audience her story, and everything turns upside down. But even so much could have gone wrong that it's impossible to list everything. One convincing point is that Nina was lucky to find Millie, who, because of her legal troubles, would tolerate her abuse until the very end. Yet even here, a lot could have been unpredictable, so the fact that Nina's plan works perfectly is a little bit fantastical. What did I like, though, is Nina's backstory. She was a single mother with no close support, often the ideal portrait for abusers, a woman already socially isolated with nowhere to turn. This feels realistic, and I completely understand why Nina fell in love with Andrew, because like most abusers, he initially appeared as a prince and only later revealed his true nature. And why Andrew became interested in Nina? Because he saw in her a potential perfect victim. Amanda's performance in the film is also excellent. She very well combines Nina's warmth and sincerity with her fake manic episodes. However, there is one significant detail that wasn't transferred to the film: Nina's appearance. In the book, she described as a fairly ordinary woman who, as the story progresses, increasingly gets herself go, according to Millie's observation. She gains weight, stops dyeing her hair, and even wears dirty clothes. In the book, this is all a part of Nina's plan to become so unpleasant for Andrew, especially in contrast to the attractive Millie, that he would finally turn his attention to the maid. In the film, however, and let's be honest, in real life, Amanda Seyfried looks amazing. There is one scene where her fake friends talk about how she gained weight, but in the film it's barely noticeable. In Seyfried's portrayal, Nina almost always looks perfect, with her hair and makeup done. For me, it was a small bummer already at the stage of trailers, when it became obvious that Amanda Seyfried looks like Amanda Seyfried. That moment in the book where the husband distances himself from the woman because she has gained weight, stopped dyeing her hair, and so on, was very telling. In the film, it's completely absent, which I think is a real shame. Another characteristic trait of Nina was her relationship with the gardener Enzo. They had a romance, and Nina even wanted Enzo to run away with her and her daughter. Enzo also served as a moral compass, pressuring her that leaving Millie with Andrew was wrong. He has his own clear motivation to help Nina, besides obviously being attracted to her. He also figured out about the Andrew's abuse. Enzo's sister was once married to an abusive man, and Enzo attacked him, fled the country, and is now hiding in the US. So he has his own backstory, which organically fits into the plot. In the film, however, his role is much smaller than in the book. There is no romance between him and Nina. He simply wants to help her. His personal motivation, including the story about his sister, isn't revealed. In the book, Enzo also repeatedly tries to warn Millie that she should leave the family, adding suspense and tension from the start. In the film, Enzo and Millie speak maybe once, and it carries almost no significant weight. But I was told, for example, that Enzo will appear in later books, so if the film gets a sequel, maybe his character would develop a bigger role. Andrew's character, both in the book and in the the film is a portrait of a classic abuser. I genuinely felt fear and frustration reading and watching how cleverly he orchestrated everything, framing Nina as unstable, wanting to kill her daughter, while presenting himself as the angel who tolerates and protects her. Interestingly, the film adds depth to his story through his mother. In the book, she only appears at the funeral at the very end, while in the film we see her in the Winchester home, with China set that becomes very important for Andrew. First, introducing the mother earlier allows the film to better set up the ending, showing that Andrew's abusive tendencies partly stem from her. She disciplined him and also abused him. In the book, this comes almost out of nowhere, but in the film we can at least trace this subplot. Secondly, adding the China set element slightly changes ending, in my opinion, for better. In the book, when Andrew locks Millie in the attic, he forces her to stack books on her stomach and lie like that for several hours. Painful, yes, but in the film this moment is made more cinematic and intense. Millie accidentally breaks Andrew's China set, which becomes the trigger for him to reveal his true nature and lock Millie in the attic. Accordingly, the punishment changes. In the film, Andrew makes Millie injure herself with the broken pieces, which I think is more brutal and symbolic than in the book. I also really believe that the film's resolution is much stronger. The book ending feels somewhat chaotic compared to how the story unfolds in the first half. In essence, everything resolves through a chain of coincidences. Millie manages to outsmart Andrew, tortures him and kills him. Nina decides to save Millie, but when she arrives, Andrew breaks free from the attic, adding more tension and action to the film. In the book, by the time Nina arrives, it's already unnecessary because Andrew is dead. In the film, Nina even has a final conversation with Andrew, and when he tries to attack her, Millie protects her and pushes Andrew down the stairs. In the book, when the police arrives, the heroines don't even try to hide the story. There is plenty of evidence to arrest them, but the detective investigating the case turns out to be the father of one of Andrew's former girlfriends. Knowing about his abusive behavior, he decides to cover for Nina and Millie. It's a bit of a deus ex machina. A character who hadn't appeared before suddenly intervenes at the most critical moment, and the backstory of Andrew's ex, which barely appeared earlier in the book, suddenly becomes extremely important for the ending. This decision would have worked much better if the book had subtly foreshadowed it through hints and small cues that readers could track. That way, the novel could also be great for a second reading, letting you spot those details and see them in new light. The film, however, handles the ending much better. First, Nina and Millie at least attempt to disguise the murder as an accident. While not entirely convincing, it at least shows that the characters don't rely on a pure luck. When Nina speaks with the police, she talks to a female officer who is the sister of one of Andrew's ex-girlfriends. In my opinion, changing the father to the sister works better, as it immediately introduces the element of solidarity among women. The officer instantly understands the abuse Nina endured, making her decision to cover it up as an accident believable. Another interesting change in the film is the attic. Most of the key events, including imprisonment and abuse, happen there. In the book, it's described as very cramped and oppressive, so small that you can't even fully stretch out. In the film, it's made bigger and brighter. At first, I thought this was a strange choice, but during an interview with Paul Feig, he explained it like this. The attic was key. In the book, it's ominous, but Millie wouldn't move into a space covered in cobwebs, and Nina wouldn't want that either. She is luring her. So we made the attic bright and cozy in Laura Ashley style, but remove the light and it turns to be a prison cell, almost like a psychiatric hospital. After hearing that explanation, I realized it makes sense, playing with the attic space so it changes depending on the lighting. Visually, the film is well shot, but again without particularly stood out moments. It looks pleasant and it's always clear what's happening on screen, but since it's aimed at the mass audiences, you shouldn't expect any experimental techniques or deep subtext. In the end, The Housemaid is a simple yet engaging psychological thriller that works well for a single viewing. It doesn't aim to be complex or deep, but it holds your attention, delivers intrigue and unexpected twists, and keeps the viewer hooked. So I think it's the perfect choice if you want an entertaining, light thriller without too many complications. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel. It really helps our videos to stand up during this time of YouTube algorithms, so we're always very grateful for your support and activity. So again, thank you for watching and see you in the next videos. Bye bye!